Welcome to Communication, Connection, Community, the Podcasters Podcast. This podcast takes a deep dive into modern-day communication strategies in the podcasting space. We chat with interesting people who make the podcasting and speaking spaces exciting and vibrant. We also dive into the podcasting community with news, updates, latest trends and topics from this ever-evolving space. So strap in. It's going to be one amazing ride. Let's dive into today's episode. James I. Bond, one of America's leading behavioral management and business marketing specialists, and is the author of the multi-award-winning book, Brain Glue: How Do You Sell Easier by Making Your Ideas Sticky? We're going to talk about a number of things for sure today. I'm guaranteed I think we're in for a treat today. James, welcome to the podcast.
Carl, thank you so much for having me. Love your podcast. Love it.
Well, thank you so much. Before we dive into Brain Glue and what this is, because when you reached out, you said, I have something fascinating to share with you. I'm already hooked. I want to know all about that, but I want to hear a little bit about how you got to where you are today. I know we can't go too far back, but how did you get into this place where you are being this behavioral management and business marketing specialist?
So it's funny you should say, I let people know I'm James I. Bond because I think my parents had a sense of humor. But people say but I go, yeah, I. You know, that's, think of that now. I'm originally from Montreal. I lived in Southern California for 37 years. Got a son and 3 daughters, and our middle daughter, we gave her the initials L.A., Lauren Asia, AJA from Steely Dan song. So we remember how long have we been in Southern California? How old is Lauren? Oh, okay, there we go. You know, I ran an advertising agency in Montreal, and I worked my way up and eventually won major clients: Kraft Foods, Timex, Avon Cosmetics, Abbott Laboratories, Seagram's, their world headquarters is there. And so I had the opportunity to win the anti-drug campaign in America. And I came up with powerful, logical reasons why you should not do drugs, okay? Logical. I'm a logical guy, okay? And then I lost. And who did I lose to? I lost to a guy holding an egg saying, this is your brain, cracking the shell and dropping the egg into a sizzling frying pan.
Right.
This is your brain on drugs. Any questions? When I saw the ad, 2 things happened. The first one was I recognized this is infinitely more powerful than any of the logical ads I came up with. But the second thing I discovered realized is it's emotional. This is emotional selling, not logical selling. And I have no clue how to do emotional selling. I can tell you, don't do it because of this point, and all that stuff. But they didn't do that. They actually created an emotional message. And it's terrified me. And so I did some research. I went to the libraries and whatever else in our university, but there's nothing really on emotional selling. You know, superficial things, but nothing really. So I decided, first I was terrified, but then I said, you know what? The scientist in me came out and I said, I bet I could figure out how emotional selling works. So next to my computer, I'd put a box. I call it the passion box. And I love 3x5 cards. So on a 3x5 card, I wrote your brain on drugs. So I'd remember the ad. And I put it into 3x5 and into the box, my passion box. And every time I saw an ad or heard something, a quote from a famous person, for example, that was emotionally powerful, rather than trying to analyze it, I put it in the passion box in the hopes that eventually I'll have so many examples that I'll be able to figure it out. Well, after 10 years, I moved to Southern California and I met John Gray. And John Gray was telling me about this incredible book he wrote and how frustrated he was. He wrote this book called Men, Women, and Relationships. And he started telling me that people were telling him, this is the most important and valuable relationship book I've ever read. And yet almost nobody was buying the book. So he's at a conference trying to sell his book. And he says something, and all the women in the audience laughed. And all the men are looking at the women like, what's so funny about what he just said? And so he says, you see, there are some things that women find funny, and there's some things that men find funny, and there's some things that we all find funny. Well, one of the women screams out, it's almost like men are from a different planet. What planet do you think men are from? And so he says, I guess we're from Mars. Men are from Mars. And everybody started laughing. When he got home, he went, I try to emotionally affect people with the book, and they are affected by the book. but not by the title, Men, Women, and Relationships. But I said Men Are From Mars, and everybody laughed. I got everybody laughing. What if I change the title of my book? Like, if men are from Mars, where are women from? I guess women are from Venus. Venus is the god of love.
Right.
What if I change the title of the book to Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? And then put references to it. Keep the same book, but put references throughout the book to Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, so people can relate. What do you think happened? Almost overnight, 500,000 copies got sold, then 1 million, then 2 million. Steve Harrison, who helped him market, was telling me, guess how many books he's sold already? Over 50 million books. He went from 20,000 books, 20,000 to 50 million, not 50,000. He went from 20,000 to 50 million books, all because he changed the title. Whoa. And so when I got home, I'm taking the book and I'm going to put it in my passion box. And I stopped and I said, well, wait a second. Men aren't really from a different planet, although I think a lot of women out there think we are. I know you think we are. We might be, okay? It's a whole other story.
Depends on who you talk to, James, really.
My wife is positive we're from a different planet. Let me start there, okay? But I realized it's a metaphor, Yeah. What he's basically saying is men are so different than women that it's almost like we're from a different planet, okay? But if he said that, it would be hard to read, but it would be hard to relate to. But if you said men are from Mars, women are from Venus, I mean, I remember being in a bookstore and I'm looking at different books. Okay, this book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. This book, what? Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? What the heck's that? Picked it up. Okay, it got my attention. I mean, think of how much competition we all have. Right. Even for our podcast, you have lots of competition, right? So you want people to go, huh? The good, the bad, and the ugly? What? I mean, there's the name of a movie, right? Sergio Leone created a movie. Tell me some of the other movies he created. I bet most people have difficulty, okay? I had to think before. He had to, but it's because it wakes up the brain. So when I got home and I went like metaphors, this is a metaphor because men aren't really from a different planet. Have I just discovered the secret to emotional selling, or at least one of the secrets? So when I got home, I dumped the passion box on my bed. I had to because I needed a big one because I had so many samples. And I said, let me see what there is. And what I discovered is metaphors is one of 14 brain triggers at the heart of emotional selling. I thought my brain was going to explode. It's like, if I just figured out something that other people haven't figured out about persuasion. And so I remember I was a consultant. I still am, but I was a consultant. So as a consultant, you're lucky because you get to practice on your clients. Usually it's 80-20. 80% of the stuff you use because you know it works. And 20% you go, here's an idea. Let's see if this works. Well, I tried this on the first client I had, a construction company. 3 guys who after 10 years reached $2 million of sales. Wow. I applied brain glue and they went from 2 to 10 million in sales in 1 year and reached 32 million 2 years later because it stuck to the brain. I started to realize, like, my goodness. I mean, we have to remember we're overloaded with information being thrown at us on all levels. People wear T-shirts that have an ad for Nike. People wear, all kinds of things, texts that we get and everything else. My ad, here's the brain glue. You see that, right? Sitting next to me and whatever else. And so we're so bombarded with information that if we want to stand out from the crowd, we need a way to wake up the brain. So the brain goes, the good, the bad, and the ugly. What? Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. What? I remember I have a TV next to me where I work on a computer. I usually don't watch TV, but for whatever reason, I had it on. And there's an ad for Blue Emu. I could care less. Blue Emu is a arthritis cream that you put on your joints and stuff like that. But they had Johnny Bench, a famous baseball player, and he's going, Blue Emu, it works fast and you won't stink. What did he just say? From that point forward, they had me focused on the commercial, and I watched it from that point forward. That's because he used a trigger word. It works fast and you won't stink. What? I mean, I work with Warren Buffett's team, okay? Because I am one of America's leading behavior management specialists, which is lots of fun. And Warren Buffett has great lines. He says, when the tide goes out, only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked. What? I mean, what he's basically saying is, only when times get tough, you realize who's competent and capable. Okay. Yeah. But if he said that, it would go in one ear and out the other. I mean, it's logical. We go, oh, yeah, I agree. But by saying only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked. Whoa, what? The first thing you do is you get a visual in your mind, in your head. Okay. Yep. I like saying brain glue is so powerful. It's like a naked man running through your backyard. You look out there, you go, what? Okay. You want to grab their attention. And so when you use certain tools like rhyme or chiasmus, I'll talk about some of these things, which is a flip, all for one and one for all. Okay. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Okay. Mankind must put an end to war, or war will put an end to mankind. This is from President John F. Kennedy. Malcolm X said, and this is chiasmus, the flip. Okay. In-N-Out burgers, In-N-Out. Okay. In-N-Out burgers has the two things. First is they use the flip, the in and out.
Right.
Second is In-N-Out is another way of saying sex. I remember I'm driving down the street. They didn't have as much money as McDonald's and Burger King and everything else, and yet as a family business, they've grown and become massively wealthy. In-N-Out burgers are on the West Coast. But I'm driving down the street and I'm looking. Okay, here's In-N-Out burgers. In-N-Out is that's sex. What is In-N-Out burgers? And then we went through it and we liked it, and because of that, we went back over and over again. That's how they become successful. Because you have to have a good product, but if you have a good product, you're still struggling. And so that's why Brain Glue recognizes some of these little tools that make you massively successful. So here's a question, okay? How would you like to invent a product that's incredible? Somebody steals it from you, your biggest competitor or your enemy steals it from you, and they get massively wealthy and rich, and you struggle so much you stop selling it. Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah, no.
No, okay. So the head of Post Cereals competes with Kellogg's. Sorry, I'm blabbing away on this, but it's so much fun. Post Cereals competes with Kellogg's. So the head of Post Cereals said, let's make a new product that's totally different from cereal. Let's make like this breakfast little cake, okay? It's a little cake. We'll put jam or jelly inside it. So like, strawberry, blueberry, raspberry inside it. And, make it like square or rectangle. We'll put it inside a toaster. And when it comes up out of the toaster, you have this nice warm cake you could eat. And let's call it Country Squares. Well, he was so proud of this new product that he invented that 3 months before he launched it, he promoted it to the media. He said, we got this new product. Look, Country Squares. You put it inside the thing and you pop out. So the head of Kellogg's, who was very competitive, looked at this and went, oh, what an amazing product. Guys, come here. All the employees, look at that. We need to figure out how to make that product, okay? But we also have to come up with a better name. Country Squares. What a stupid name, okay? So he said, okay. So he used something called sense elevation to start with. And sense elevation is like Smells Like Teen Spirit. You know that song?
Yeah.
Kurt Cobain. I love that song. It's fantastic. But Smells Like Teen Spirit? Ugh, what does that smell like? Okay. So he went, well, it pops out of the toaster. So let's call it Pop something. And back then, Andy Warhol was really famous, and he was a pop artist. So they used something called anchoring, where you're using a sound that's already in the brain. Pop art, Pop-Tart. Let's call it Pop-Tarts. Pop-Tarts, of course, he launched it 1 week before Country Squares launched. Okay, of course. And sales exploded. I mean, exploded. So they couldn't keep enough in stores. They ran out of product. So he ran ads in newspapers saying, I apologize. I'm so sorry, Pop-Tarts ran out, but just hold on for a day or so and we'll have more Pop-Tarts in the thing. Nobody bought Country Squares. Pop-Tarts exploded in sales. Last year, they sold over 3 billion Pop-Tarts. And Country Squares, within 6 months, because they kept trying to sell it. Within 6 months, they decided to stop even trying to sell it.
Yeah.
So Kellogg's made a fortune while Post ended up losing, all because, they didn't have as good a name. And that's why we need to remember when we're talking to somebody, if we're trying to persuade them or trying to sell them a product or service or a concept, like give a hoot, don't pollute. There are lots of ways to do this where if the glove doesn't fit, you have to acquit. If any of us is going to trial, remember, use rhyme. It works, okay? But anyway.
I would imagine, James, that there was a time where we didn't even think about emotional selling. It wasn't something that came to mind. But I think you're right in the sense that this now is top of mind, considering how much noise is out there, that we need to be appealing to the emotions of people to get our message through.
Absolutely. We want to stand out from the crowd. And so let me give you this funky example, okay? So Marilyn Monroe, okay? Her actual name was Norma Jean Mortensen, okay? And her manager said, Norma Jean's not really a good name for models. because she was a model back then. He said, would you be willing to change your name to Marilyn? Because I think they like that more. And she said, yeah, sure. Okay, Marilyn. That's okay, Marilyn. Well, her mom's maiden name was Monroe. And so she said, I kind of like the sound of Marilyn Monroe. Well, why does she like it? Because it uses something called alliteration, the repetition of sound. Marilyn Monroe, like Coca-Cola, Best Buy, PayPal, okay? Biden's Build Back Better, blah, blah, blah. Trump's Make America Great Again, good. I mean, they use it on purpose because they recognize that alliteration works. So she changed her name to Marilyn Monroe. Then she loved Jean Harlow, okay? And Jean Harlow was famous back then, and she had platinum blonde hair. So she lived in Southern California, Marilyn Monroe. So she went to the same hairdresser as Jean Harlow, and she said, can you dye my hair the same color as hers? Mm-hmm. And they said, yes, absolutely. And they did. And so now she's Marilyn Monroe, a name easy to remember. And she has platinum blonde hair like Jean Harlow. But she had a beauty mark on the left side of her cheek, and she covered it up with makeup. Well, one day she's looking at photographs of Jean Harlow, and she realized that Jean Harlow has a beauty mark. Sometimes it's on her cheek, and sometimes it's on her chin. And then she goes, wait a second. I bet she doesn't even have a beauty mark. I bet she just put that dot on her face so that people would notice her and stand out from the crowd. So Marilyn, instead of hiding her beauty mark, now she started making it darker. And you can see famous photographs of her all the time with that beauty mark on it.
Right.
And suddenly she became massively successful. I mean, massively successful. And she thought a lot of it was because of the beauty mark. So there's Cindy Crawford. Cindy Crawford was the first supermodel. Okay. She was really a fantastic supermodel. And Cindy Crawford, in her biography, she talks about how she has this big birthmark on the left side of her lip, just above her lip. And she begged her mom as a kid, she begged her mom, please, can you take me to the doctor and get it removed? She says, I am so glad my mom didn't get it removed. I believe that beauty mark is the reason why I became a supermodel and stood out from everybody else who's a model. I mean, you think about that. Just related to this, David Ogilvy, who's an early biggest advertisers in the world back then, he was really amazing. So he was doing ads for Hathaway shirts, and Hathaway is owned by Warren Buffett. It's Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway. It's actually how he bought the company. But Hathaway shirts was starting out back then. And so if you're doing an ad for shirts, what would you do? You have a good-looking guy wearing a shirt, nice pair of pants, in a nice background maybe, or whatever, okay? Every ad looks exactly the same. And he realized, I need a way to make it stand out from the crowd. So going with this whole idea of putting a dot on, he didn't put a dot on the person's face, okay? But what he did was he put an eye patch on the guy, and he called it the man in the Hathaway shirt. And so you're flipping through a magazine, you're going through it, and you know, here's a guy with an eye patch. What the heck's that? The man in a Hathaway shirt. And they never explained, by the way, why he had an eye patch. Every one of their ads, different guy with an eye patch on. And it would grab your attention. And you go like, what? Huh? And that's what, he understood as we're understanding. You want to stand out from the crowd because, more and more people are doing advertising, marketing, podcasts, whatever else. And so we need to find a way. Brain Glue shows you 14 tools. Like one of the tools is trigger words, like the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I know this guy and his David Baer, Baer, and he and his partner, they have a podcast, but they also do marketing they help advertisers. Okay.
Right.
And so I forget the name of his company, and most people can't remember the name of his company. So as I'm talking to him, I said, David, Baer, you should change the name of your company to Bare Naked Advertising. And his partner went, yes, that's fantastic. And he's going, I don't know if I want the name Naked next to my name and blah, blah. So I don't think he's changed it yet. But think about it. I said Bare Naked Advertising. I bet in 2 hours from now, if I said the guy's name was David Baer, do you remember what his company's name? Everyone will remember. Yeah, Bare Naked Advertising. It sticks to the brain. You want to, come up with a name that people remember, that sticks to the brain. We work so hard. People go, oh, wow, that was fantastic. That was a fantastic podcast. What's it called? Hang on, let me look it up. I can't remember the name, blah, blah, blah. That works against us. What we want to do is we want to come up with, obviously yours are tremendous because it's focusing on communication and everything else, which is essential. And that's what I'm trying to talk about is how we communicate changes people's lives. And, and there are tools that we use that make it easier for us to communicate in such a way that people will actually listen to us.
Without giving away your best stuff, and I know you've shared a lot already, but what are some of the things that people need to do to start on that journey? What are some of the steps that people need to take?
Well, so let me give you a few of the tools, okay? And like everybody else, there's a few of the tools. Let me give you an example first, and then I'll give you the tool, okay? Paul Tran. Paul Tran started a company, and he created an electric razor for men's private areas. So he wanted to come up with a name for the razor. He wanted people to know how it works, but he didn't want to offend people. So he's thinking of a metaphor, okay, or analogy. And so it's just like what? And he was thinking. He said, well, it's just like a lawnmower. Why don't I call it the lawnmower? He changed the name of his company to Manscaped. Okay, you got to landscape a man with a lawnmower. Okay, and I never bought the lawnmower. I was actually in Bed Bath and Beyond, I think it was, with my wife, and they had a big poster, and it says the lawnmower with an arrow, and it's showing the razor. And then I'm going like, what? And I start reading it. And as everybody who walked by it, or every guy who walked by it, read the details, because you want them to read, what it is you're selling. No, I never bought the lawnmower. If I bought the lawnmower, I wouldn't share it with my friends. Let's start there, okay? So, but if I bought the lawnmower, I can imagine I calling my friend, because I would do this, and I would say to my friend Joe, hey Joe, just guess what I just bought? What? The lawnmower. Oh, you have to mow your lawn? No, it's from Shaving Man's Private Areas. He'd start laughing and say, hey, Mary, his wife or girlfriend, hey, Mary, guess what James just bought? What? The lawnmower. Why, does he need to mow his lawn? No, it's James's private areas. They start laughing and sharing it, becomes viral. And so that's what we want, is we want to be viral as much as possible. I recently had heart bypass surgery. Not fun for all you out there, okay? About a month ago. That was really quite amazing. But when I'm in the hospital, I have to talk about brain glue, because that's what I talk about, But I was talking to the nurse, and I said, so I wrote this book called Brain Glue. I was, sharing it with people. And she says, oh, what's that all about? I said, well, there's this mom and son in Utah who love Shark Tank. And I mean, they were working, they had jobs and whatever else, but they love Shark Tank, and the whole idea of like, wow, inventing a product and getting it on Shark Tank, and maybe, you become a multimillionaire. And so I was thinking, well, it would be fun if we can come up with a product. So it took a while. You don't usually go, oh, I got a product, I got it right away. It takes a while to come up with what would be an ideal product, because it's got to be a good product. And mom was constipated. And so the doctor told her, besides taking drugs and, whatever else, Metamucil or whatever else you're going to take, when you're on the toilet, if you can raise your feet 6 to 8 inches off the floor while you're on the toilet, it changes the shape of your body, and it really helps. Well, she tried that, and it worked. It was amazing. And so she said, why don't we create a little stool that fits around the toilet, and you can pull it out and put your feet on it, really great. So the first thing they thought of was, what's a logical name for the product? Because we're logical people, most of us. Start with a logical name and then come up with the brain glue name, okay, the emotional name. So they said, it's a toilet stool. But I don't want to call it the toilet stool. That doesn't sound very good. So what's another name for a toilet? Potty. And you're kind of squatting when you're sitting there. Why don't we call it the Squatty Potty? Okay. Sales exploded. They bought like 1,000 for like $1 each or $2 each, and it was $2,000, whatever else. And they sold out like almost instantly online. And then they started selling more. They sold over $100 million, $100 million of their Squatty Potties. Okay.
Wow.
So I'm telling the nurse this story, and she goes, you know what? I got to tell you this. I knew all about the idea of raising your feet, and I would raise my feet with a little stool or something like that in my thing. But when I saw Squatty Potty, I loved the name so much, I ended up buying the product. She knew all about it. She knew how to do this, and yet she still bought the product because she loved the name. Wow. And that's, like for my mind, I'm like, oh, I got to remember this. Oh, you're going through an operation. I know, but wait, I got to remember this. But it was just amazing, because it's what we want. Is you want a name. It's like Hooters, a restaurant. Somebody opened up a restaurant around called Hooters. What is this? Girls with shorts and t-shirts, good-looking girls, whatever. But it's still Hooters. But because it's called Hooters, I live in Southern California in Thousand Oaks, and they wanted to open up a Hooters, and they said, no, you're not allowed. And they fought to not open up a Hooters. It's a Hooters. What is it? It's just a restaurant with good-looking girls in it. But it's because it's called Hooters, it wakes up the brain, and people go like, whoa, what?
Right. So what are some of the steps then that or some of the tools that people need to do.
Exactly. So I told you the story about the shaver because of metaphor. So here's the first tool you want to come up with, okay? And that is a metaphor or analogy. And so complete this phrase. My product or idea is just like, and be as crazy as possible. Start, my book is just like a naked man running through your backyard. Pick the craziest name possible. And then you could work it down. But my product or service, my podcast is just like what? It's like standing there with Albert Einstein. Okay. My podcast is just like, what do you call the knife that you open up?
The Swiss Army knife.
My podcast is like a Swiss Army knife, any topic you want, we get, you know what I mean? You say it that way, people go like, oh, interesting. And they'll remember it because that sticks to the brain because of that. So that's the first thing is you always want to come up with an analogy or metaphor. My product or idea is just like blank. And in fact, they had, I forget what his name is, but the famous director who did Alien. Well, Jaws had just come out and it was a blockbuster. So he sold it to investors by saying, this is Jaws in space. And then the investors went, oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, it's Jaws in space. It's just like, Jaws, and you don't know this thing's going to happen. It attacks you. Same thing, but in space. And they went, oh, this is Jaws in space. And he raised money like in no time. So it's just, metaphors are the first thing that you always want to start with. Second thing is rhyme. Rhyme is really good. For brain glue, I say, switch your pitch if you want to get rich. Okay. Right. So I said, pitch. Pitch is the word, it's like helping you with your pitch. So what rhymes with pitch? Switch your pitch if you want to get rich. Okay. Then I wanted to get more fancy. So I said, desire. It helps you build desire in people. So what rhymes with desire? Lights the fire. Fire, desire, buyer. Brain glue lights the fire of desire in your buyer. So rhyme is a good word. So find words that either the name of your product or things that relate to your product, like Squatty Potty, okay? And so come up with Squatty, okay, what rhymes with, potty, what rhymes with potty, and then just have fun with that. And then another one is alliteration, the repetition of sounds, buh, buh, like brain bump, buh, buh, Coca-Cola, Best Buy, PayPal, TikTok, my youngest daughter, I have a son and 3 daughters. My son is 42 and my daughters are in their 30s. My youngest daughter loves TikTok. And I said, TikTok is a Chinese social media platform. And she said, no, it's not. I said, yeah, it is. It's Chinese. She said, no. And she did some research and came back and said, oh, you're right. If TikTok named itself the Chinese social media platform, you think it would be as successful as TikTok? No. And so how do they come up with it? Because we think it's rich people that do this, but there are a lot of poor people that start with Famous Amos. He wasn't rich, Wally Amos. He wasn't rich, but his name, Famous Amos, stuck to everybody's brain. Famous Amos cookies, and people taste the cookie. Oh, they're really fun. Well, what's it called? Famous Amos. You remember it because it sticks to the brain. And so that's what you want is, those are 3 simple ones is, definitely a metaphor and then a rhyme and then alliteration, a repetition of sound. These are really good tools to start with. Jack Canfield, who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul, he was massively wealthy. He sold 500 million. He sold 100 million Chicken Soup for the Soul books and 400 million of the Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul, Chicken Soup for the Cancer Survivor Soul, all those other ones. 500 million books. How'd you like to sell that? Okay, at $10 a book, hey, I'll take it. I'll take a tenth of that, please. It's only $1 billion. So he's massively wealthy, and he's done more than 60 other famous books, okay? But most of them are famous because he's Jack Canfield, so they know he's really smart, and they listen to him. There's trigger words, okay? Like the good, the bad, and the ugly, and all that stuff. The original title for my book, because I was into trigger words back then, was I was looking at Big Ass Fans. And Carrie Smith, who started Big Ass Fans, when he changed the name to Big Ass Fans, suddenly his sales exploded and he became massively, massively wealthy. So I said, let me put ass in it. So I called the book, Dump Your Half-Ass Marketing Strategies. But then Amazon said, no, we don't like swear words. You got a swear word inside that. Right. So you have to change it. And I had like 80 reviews. You want to get over 100 reviews with Amazon because then, they promote it more. Right. And so I had 80 reviews. So I begged them, you're getting me to change my name. If I'm changing the title of my book, would you let me transfer those testimonials? And they said, yes. Okay. We don't normally do that, but we will do it with you. So me, like an idiot, like a putz, I changed the name and used the logical title. And it was Sell More with the Right Brain Marketing Strategy. Okay.
Right.
So I'm with Jack Canfield, and I have a friend, so he put up my book with the books that he looks at because he reviews lots of books. And he's telling me, I got so pissed off when I read your book. I said, really, I'm sorry. He said, I have so many books to go through. I picked up your book. I couldn't put the damn thing down. I said, I'm sorry. Can I use that as a quote? I'm sorry. But he said, on one condition, you got to change the title of your damn book. I said, what? It was called Sell More with the Right Brain Marketing Strategy. He said, you're teaching us to sell emotionally, and you got a logical title. The whole book's about brain glue. You got to change the title to brain glue. I said, do I have to? He said, absolutely. And I did. And he was right. Absolutely. It's, but, it made me realize, and as all of us, we fall into the logic category first.
Right.
He's telling me, because I didn't invent brain glue. Here's an important issue. I invented the term brain glue. But brain glue's been around for a long time. We relate to it. Marilyn Monroe, she just went Marilyn Monroe. She knew that, her brain, her heart helped her recognize, her emotions helped her recognize it sounds better if it's alliteration, if it's Marilyn Monroe. And so she started to uncover that. Well, for all of us, it's the same thing, is we want to recognize that. So Jack Canfield wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul, right? Well, what he did was, he's telling me he wrote the book, and it was originally going to be called 101 Motivational Stories That Will Change Your Life. But he's going, it's logical. It doesn't really work. He said it took him about a month of like sleepless nights. And then he woke up one day and he said, chicken soup makes you feel better for a lot of people. Maybe I should call my book Chicken Soup for the Spirit. Doesn't really work, but it's kind of close. He said, and so then after about a weekend of sleepless nights, he realized SOUP, soup, soul. It sounds better when it goes that way. Chicken Soup for the Soul. And once he had the name Chicken Soup for the Soul, he went, yeah, that's the title. That's the title. And then the rest, because it's fun to sell. I hated selling when I first started in business. Then I went to Jack Canfield. I went to, what's his name? Who said, I have to think of his name, Zig Ziglar. And I love Zig Ziglar. And Zig Ziglar had a fantastic line that really changed my life, because I hated selling back then. He said, selling is nothing more than a transference of passion. If you're passionate about something, you want to transfer that passion to somebody else. If you saw a movie that you love, I saw Hidden Figures with the 3 black women in NASA and all that stuff. I love that movie. It's just on so many levels, it's fantastic. You don't have to teach me how to sell it. I just talk to somebody and say, man, you got to see Hidden Figures. I love. Okay. Well, with marketing, it's the same thing. Is we get passionate about something. You get passionate about product or service or the podcast you're on, whatever else. You need to transfer that passion to them. And the way you do it is you start by saying, well, logically, what it is am I trying to do? Now let's come up with emotional ways to say it. Because people have to go like, oh, that's, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Whoa, what's that all about? The good, the bad, and the ugly. There's a TV show, Ugly Betty, that became a massive success. Okay. And it's because it used a trigger word. And so when you start to understand these tools, these that fit to the brain, that stick to the brain, it just changes our lives is what it does.
And so many great insights in that book as well. Oh my goodness, James, we could talk forever. But I think I want to give our listeners the opportunity to grab your book, and you've got a specific link that you want them to go to grab that.
Yeah, and if you go to yesbrainglue.com, that'll take you to a page that has all kinds of information and little tools and tricks from Brain Glue and everything else. Hopefully you get the book, but if you just go to the page, yesbrainglue.com, I think you'll really enjoy it.
As I said, when we first started chatting, I was blown away when you said, I have something that I think you're going to like. And the reason why, as James has indicated a couple times today, this brain glue it's not just for business owners. It's not just for people in the marketing space, podcasters. And that's why I'm glad you've shared so much wisdom, so many stories as well, to give those great examples as to how this works. Because, and hindsight being 2020, well, hindsight can come before, but if we just allow ourselves to look at things differently, we'll allow ourselves to implement brain glue. So grab a copy of the book. We'll make sure that all of James's information, links, socials, that's all in the in the show notes as well. Oh my goodness, James, we could probably talk for the next 400 hours, but my goodness. Before I let you go, I'll give you the final thought though. And hey, we might need to have another conversation, but before I let you go, James, the final thought.
Carl, thank you so much. And so all of you out there, start with a metaphor or analogy, okay? Take your product or service or idea, because it could be an idea, and what's it like? And I'll give you just a quick example. So I had a friend that was, because this applies to all kinds of things. I have a friend who was a narrow-minded, and I'm trying to get him to be open-minded. So what else is open? Umbrellas are open. They work better when they're open. Parachutes, books, if you buy a book, if you don't open it, you're not going to benefit from it. So I said to him, Joseph, your mind is like a parachute. It works better when it's open. And suddenly he went, oh, okay. And he was, instead of being pissed off because I said, have an open mind, he just told me, oh, tell me what to do. He was actually open-minded about it. So the first thing you want to think of is a metaphor. My product, service, or idea is just like what? And be as crazy as possible. And I'm willing to bet for a lot of you, you're going to get something and it's going to start helping you persuade people and open their eyes and minds about what it is that you're offering that will really get their attention and maybe sell products or ideas for you.
James Ibond, Brain Glue. Grab your copy. The link again in the show notes. Thank you so much, James, for being my guest today.
Carl, thank you so much. Love your podcast.
And thank you for joining us today. Special thanks to our producer and production lead, Dom Carrillo, our music guru, Nathan Simon, and the person who works the arms, all of our arms actually, my trusty assistant, Stephanie Gafour. If you like what you heard today, leave us a comment and a review, and be sure to share it with your friends. If you don't like what you heard, please share it with your enemies. Oh, and if you have a suggestion of someone who you think would make an amazing guest on the show, let us know about it. Drop us an email. Ask Carl at carlspeaks.ca. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. You'll find all those links in the show notes. And if you're ready to take the plunge and join the over 3 million people who have said yes to podcasting, let's have a conversation. We'll show you the simplest way to get into the podcasting space because after all, we're Podcast Solutions Made Simple. We'll catch you next time.